Hello, my name is Jesse and welcome to Great State. Today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of teletherapy for you. If you've been looking for a therapist lately, you may have noticed that there's a lot more options online to do teletherapy. You may be saying to yourself, is this a good choice? Is it as effective? Is this good for me? Well, today I'm going to lay out some of the pros and cons of doing teletherapy so that you can make a good decision. I'm going to start with the pros first. Number one, access to therapists. Your search for therapists can now encompass your entire state and even sometimes out of state depending on where that therapist is licensed to practice. So you no longer have to worry about how far am I willing to drive for therapy, but more of who do I want to see. And depending on the specialty you're looking for, that might be a really big boon for you and give you access to therapists that you might not otherwise have access to. Number two, travel time. Your travel time for therapy is now as long as it takes for you to go from your living room to your office or wherever you're going to be doing teletherapy. As long as the traffic jam of petting your cat along the way doesn't take too long, it really won't take you a long time to get there. Also, you don't have to worry about a babysitter usually. I see some clients during the day who purposely schedule their appointments for during their kid's nap time, for example. You no longer have to worry about dragging your kid along with you and having them sit in the waiting room if that's a thing, or finding some other forms of childcare to watch them. So it really frees up people's days a great deal, and no longer are you adding on that extra round trip of traveling back and forth to the office on top of the 45 minutes to an hour that you're already seeing your therapist. So it saves a lot of time. Number three, it's very private. You're no longer having to sit in a waiting room at a practice waiting for that therapist, and sometimes there's other people there waiting to see different therapists in the room, and it's unlikely, but it has happened that people run into friends or family or neighbors in that waiting room, and depending on how transparent you are with your therapy and who you're going to see, that could create an awkward situation for you. So now, doing therapy in the privacy of your own home, you don't run into anybody along the way. Number four, comfort. You get to do therapy from the comfort of your own home. I've had people wrapped up in blankets on the couch, cat in their lap, or petting their dog while they're talking to me about what's going on in their lives, or sitting in their bed, or even sometimes sitting in their car in their driveway, however they want to engage in it. But in either case, you're surrounded by things that you're comfortable with. You're in your own home. At the end of that therapy session, they can turn off the camera and go ahead and have dinner and just be relaxed in a safe, comfortable environment rather than an office that they might be unfamiliar with. Number five, safety. Depending on your current situation, right? Staying in the home is going to be a lot safer for you. With the pandemic going on, it greatly reduces your risk of exposure to other people. Right now, in-person therapy, I've done very little of it now. I'm mostly online, but the one I do go in, we're wearing masks, and it really makes things a little bit different in the room. You don't have to worry about that with teletherapy. Also, depending on your situation, leaving the house may cause a great deal of anxiety for other things that you might be dealing with. And you've removed that barrier from you and getting the service that you might need. So if that's the only way that you might engage with therapy, then this is great for you and should be considered. And lastly, number six, how effective is it? You may be asking yourself, am I going to get the same treatment? Is it going to be as effective as going in person? And I'm here to tell you that in most cases, yes, it is. There have been a great deal of studies, I'm going to try to link some below if you're interested in that sort of thing, that show that teletherapy is as effective as in-person therapy for most things that you want to go to therapy for. So that is certainly something that I'm going to be less concerned about. I'm really more concerned about, is that therapist a good fit for me? Are they doing a good job? And are they comfortable with doing teletherapy? And don't worry, therapists, I've got a video coming for you about the pros and cons of teletherapy from that side of things. All right, now that we've covered the good sides of teletherapy, let's talk about some of the cons. Number one, technology. Depending on how tech savvy you are, this could be a hurdle for you, whether you don't have the tech to do it or it's too complicated for you to use. I will say that most ways that I've engaged in teletherapy with my clients has been fairly easy. I shoot them a link at the beginning of the day and they just have to click on it and they're able to get in there. However, it has also turned me into a part-time IT specialist sometimes and having to deal with bad connections or drop calls occasionally. But overall, this isn't a great hurdle. Most people have a smartphone that is more than capable of being able to do it, but I certainly suggest at least a desktop or a laptop with a good Wi-Fi connection in order to engage in teletherapy for the best results possible. However, I've had plenty of people use their phone either on Wi-Fi or on their cellular connection to connect with me and have had good results with that as well. However, technology certainly can be a barrier if it is something that you're just not comfortable with. Number 2, no tactile input. What I mean by that, you're just not in a room with somebody, right? You're staring at a monitor or a very small cell phone screen, and there is a difference. It really does create a different sense when you're in the room with somebody, experiencing them firsthand. You're able to see the other person's body language. You're able to see so much more of them and with so much depth and detail rather than through the screen. And that certainly changes things for people. And I definitely talk to some people who really are looking for an in-person experience and feel that that will give them better treatment. And if that's something that you feel, then certainly you should look for in-person treatment. If that's less of a concern for you and you're okay with talking to somebody on a screen, then teletherapy will be a good option for you. Number 3, kids. I will say that teletherapy is a great option for most people. However, I have found greater challenges in working with children of certain ages or certain attention spans. Having a kid with a small attention span or is very young and getting them to engage with teletherapy is very challenging, and it definitely requires more input and more managing by the parent on their end as well. And I'm sure a lot of parents right now who are dealing with having their kids do Zoom classes online totally understand what I'm talking about here. There are also certain things that I like to do with kids in the therapy room that I can't really do through teletherapy, or I've had to get a little bit more creative in doing those sorts of things. So that's certainly going to change the way that we engage in teletherapy with children. And personally, I don't like to see kids below a certain age on teletherapy just because I'm just not personally comfortable with that. And below a certain age, it's just going to be really difficult. So that's something to consider. Number 4, sometimes it isn't recommended. If there's a concern for safety, I'd rather have that client in the room with me rather than in teletherapy. If something were to happen, at least I am there present with them to make sure that they are safe and that nothing as bad is going to happen to them. So certainly if the situation is high risk or there's safety involved, that is definitely a consideration to make if you're thinking about engaging in teletherapy yourself. Number 5, insurance. Unfortunately, not all insurance companies cover teletherapy. During COVID-19, the pandemic, a lot of them have made exceptions to this and have covered teletherapy just as they were covering in person. However, not all have, and some of them have certainly said that they're going to change that at some point. Hopefully, though, teletherapy is becoming more of a norm and more insurance companies are going to continue to cover it. Some also don't cover it at the same rate, so that is definitely a discussion you need to have with your insurance company and with your therapist just to make sure that you're covered. If budget is a consideration for you, then this is definitely something you want to keep in mind when you're booking your appointments on teletherapy. Number 6, privacy. I know privacy I said was a pro, but also this can be a con as well, depending on your living situation. If you live with roommates and you don't have a private space in your home to go ahead and set up your laptop and talk to the therapist, and people are coming in and out, that can make things a little awkward or difficult. If you have small children that are running in and out of the room, distracting you, that's also going to be a challenge. Or a spouse that kind of pops in the room while you're trying to talk to your therapist. This can be very challenging depending on your living situation. I've definitely had people do therapy from their car in their driveway or from their office at work, if that was a place that was viable for them to be able to get away from other people in order to just kind of give them that space or that privacy they needed. So take a look at your surroundings, see where you think you might be able to set up for teletherapy, and take that into consideration as you book your appointments. So there you have it, the pros and cons of teletherapy. Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on teletherapy and how has it worked for you. If you like this content, please consider liking and subscribing. And also, if you can, support us on Patreon so that I can continue to make more videos like this, improve their quality, and continue to offer therapy for people who need it most. Thank you so much. Welcome to Great State.